Yeah, the full of complications. You go to school, you get an education, never realizing that there's a limitation if you don't get a job.
With Mad Mad World, I wanted to get, because Vapors, of course, got very famous with the Papa Don't Take No Mess sample that you guys also used in a similar fashion. So I wanted you to explain why that James Brown song in particular resonated with you guys and why it's such a big song to so many people.
But once again, Johnny Rivers, that was, I want to say, him being a producer, that was a hot sample, and it wasn't, we didn't hear Vapors, although Vapors came out, around the same time. It wasn't like we heard Vapors and then we did that song. We actually did the song and then Vapors came out. And the funny thing is, if you listen to the song, I think Biz took a shot at us. He said, "I'm the original of the Vapors, you intellectual kid." And that was because us using the same sample as him, and Vapors having such a phenomenal success. So yeah, it wasn't anything intentional. It was just, like you hear a loop, we on one side of the coast, they on the whole nother side of the coast. So it wasn't even like at that point, the music was always being played out here. So it had to migrate out here. And sometimes by the time it migrated, some other people might have heard it and brought it over before it got on K-Day, which was the only rap station at the time, other than, the New York mix shows. So yeah, we kind of just I guess great minds think alike. And so Johnny's great mind and maybe Cool V, I think, might have produced that. Great mind thought alike. And that was a dope sample, James Brown is well used by many people. So
right.
It was loving James Brown and them having the same idea at the same time in different sides of the world.
Speaking of different sides of the world on Mad Mad World, one of the things that I always appreciated about Ice-T and you guys was putting and discussing things in different contexts that were happening outside of your immediate area. So you mentioned Ethiopia on the song. You guys also mentioned Vietnam on the song. Do you remember why, as people, as writers, that you wanted to touch on what was going on internationally for Mad Mad World?
Well, you got to realize the title in itself, Mad Mad World, reflected that. We wasn't just talking about our immediate environment. And both Brett and I have always been socially conscious about what's going on in the world. And so if you know any history or listen to any of our stuff, there will be a lot of accents of us talking social issues. When we got the opportunity, this was our first opportunity to actually it was invited to talk about social issues. So we just were speaking about things that were going on that either we were aware of or that was immediately or directly impacting us. So it was a combination of the two. Ethiopia at that point was one of the main things as far as the famine that was going on out there, and it was on every other commercial, telecommercial. They had the little kids and the donations and the flies on their faces, the infamous, that was prevalent back then, as well as, just a lot of social things that we were just aware of and we spoke on,
Right.
You mentioned Ethiopia. What was the other one that you mentioned?
Vietnam.
Oh, Vietnam. Oh, man. Well, you got to realize we were raised around a lot of Vietnam vets. My mother and father's generation were in that war. And so being in East New York, there was a lot of fathers and uncles that was living in our building that had came out of Nam. And they would tell us about it. One of the most impactful lines that my brother ever wrote was on a song that didn't come out. And he said, war, what is it good for? Is it the economy or kill off the poor? Question put to me by a Vietnam vet. Said he's been to hell, how worse could it get? Said he's seen his men just splattered into bits, loaded his clip, and then the child was hit. Now every night when he closes his eyes, he sees the mother cry as the baby dies. So that was a story that was told to us by rest in peace, one of my best friend's fathers, D. Myers, who had, or Donald Myers is his real name, who had been in the war. And he told us how many killings he had to do. And he used to, get on all of the, because we had the thug building. So he's like, yo, y'all just punks. Y'all don't know nothing about killing. Y'all ain't never killed nobody. You know how many people I done killed? Y'all running around here trying to rob people and trying to do something. And that was, he would get drunk, and that would come out naturally. So we was exposed to that through experiences like that. So speaking about it from that standpoint is what we was exposed to, and why we spoke about it so prominently.
Yeah, and then why I preferred much more than Party Time, I must say. But I also thought on there, you guys are talking about the desire that some people had to yearn to kill, and instilling fear in others and different things. So even though in New York you guys were coming from that environment, you were clearly seeing it to whatever degree in Los Angeles. How and why, since that wasn't, you guys were earlier on in the wave of talking about that stuff. There was Schoolie D, Just Ice, KRS-One, but it wasn't like everybody talks about it now.
Right.
And that wasn't your like branding per se. So what made that mean so much to you?
Because there was a lot of killings going on. There was a lot of senseless killings, and we weren't directly part of it, because we didn't grow up in South Central LA or in Watts or in the jungle, but we grew up with the same mentality, just a different place, so we could relate to it. And we saw the senselessness of it because we saw the same in East New York. We saw people getting killed and robbed out there. So when we got out here, it was over a rag, and it was over territories. We didn't have gangs back then in our generation. Before our generation, they had the Tomahawks and a couple of gangs that came out from the Bronx and spread it into Brooklyn. But it wasn't really a gang mentality, to where when we got out here, we like, yo, you don't own none of this. Y'all killing each other from across the street because of rap, so it really didn't we couldn't understand it. So that's why we asked the question why. And I would say that's my perspective. Brett's perspective, of course, is a lot different, because he was out here a lot longer than I was. By the time I came out here, I was only out here for a year. So I was really like, yo, what's going on with all this? But Brett understood it because he was navigating through the streets. So, but he was never, he would always call himself, yo, I don't bang. I ain't a gangbanger, but I bang. Was always kind of his mentality. Like, yo, we could do whatever, but I ain't with all the, because we didn't grow up. A lot of the cats who was in the gangs, they grew up with each other. So they were really protecting each other, because that was their friend. That was like a brother to them. So we understood it from that standpoint. But when it came to the rags, it kind of threw us off, because we had beef with the other projects that was across the street, and we had beef with buildings. My building versus this building right next to each other in the same project. So we understood that territorial protection, but we just didn't understand the impact and I guess the history of the gang. So that's why we was questioning it. As well as, it was senseless, and we wanted it to stop. It was an anti-gang. We was trying to say, yo, if we're going to kill something for a purpose, or kill something for, it was just like, don't just do it senselessly. Not that I want you to do it at all, but when you're doing it senselessly, it's just for something that we always have a compassion, and still have a compassion about.
Right. Okay. And then on Party Time, it was brought up, you guys moving from, or being from New York, but living in LA. And that was something that kind of sprinkled in as we get later on in your guys' career as well. Why was that important that you guys wanted to put that in the lyrics all the time?
Well, I mean, because we was proud of where we was from. We was from East New York. We had just lived in LA. So it wasn't like we was repping LA, because it wasn't like we was out here into any of the LA things. Me especially. Brett more so, because, he had the syndicate, and he had people he had knew prior to. He had already been here about 3 or 4 years before I moved. So he already kind of scratched the surface and created his own crews and all of that. Me personally, I never really, I was never really connected, because by the time I got here, I was in my junior year of high school. So everybody who was in my school already knew each other. Everybody, so I didn't know nobody. I was just out here. That's why son, I was able to kind of bring him along because he was the closest thing that I had as camaraderie, as far as being back home. So, I would say that it had a lot to do with just that's what we knew. We were, even though we lived here, thanks to my father moving out here, we were from there. And we went there regularly as well. It wasn't like we came here and just stayed there. My mom still lived there. So we would go back every summer, every Christmas, every holiday. So it was still us. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's why we always mentioned it, because that's where we was from. It wasn't no rhyme or reason to it. It was just, that's where we was from. And to your point that you said about Party Time, it wasn't our favorite either. A lot of things that we did for the sake of, that's what the label wanted. So we wanted to give them what they wanted so that we could try and do a little of what we wanted. And that was a constant fight. So when they say pave the ways, we really did pave the ways and sacrificed a lot of our creative abilities, a lot of our pride that we might have been feeling that we wanted to do, and did sometimes things that we didn't even like, or that wasn't something that we wanted to do. So Party Time, it was a side because that's what the label wanted, but we all knew we wanted Y, and we knew what Y would do, but they didn't really. Geffen at the time had no rappers. We was the first rap group signed to Geffen, so they didn't know what to do with rap, and it showed in the way that they delivered it, especially now knowing what I know in reference to promotions and marketing.
Yes, which we're about to get into, but I do want to ask, as somebody that I've always considered astute and that is intelligent, as things were going on from 783 Will Rock You to Mad Mad World to Y and Party Time, those are like big steps pretty quickly in the grand scheme of things career-wise. So being on the Color soundtrack really for your guys' second song with Mad Mad World, like what did that show you? What did you learn? What different things did you get exposed to that really helped you as you started moving on?
What's interesting about that? At the time, not much, because I didn't realize or understand the dynamic. You got to realize it wasn't a $1 billion industry. It wasn't something that everybody who got signed were that was their career to make a living. They just wanted to do something that they liked. So it wasn't something that they were thinking that it will get them out of the hood per se. The biggest thing was Run DMC at the time, and so they had promise, as far as they made promise by going platinum for the first time and all of those things. But as far as an album is concerned in the group, so we understood it, but gold was a plateau at that point. And so when Colors went gold, it was, we have arrived, but it wasn't something that we thought. We wasn't that, at least I wasn't. I was 16 at the time, so I wasn't as mindful of the business part consciously, but subconsciously, in hindsight, I learned more through that process than I even realized. It's kind of like how experience teaches you a lot better than any schooling could. I went and learned a lot that I didn't realize. And even in transitioning, if I had it to do all over again, I would have done it differently because I'm more conscious now. I'm more aware of what you just spoke about, the business part of it. I was marketing and promoting and didn't even realize I was doing that, nor did I have the title or understanding of that when I was doing it. For example, we would do Right On magazine interviews, and they would ask, what are you listening to now? And I would say, Cypress Hills, Mellow Mayonnaise. They hadn't even been in the studio yet. I was just basically, they was my people, they was Muggs people, and rather than say something that I was listening to regularly, I was just paving the way for my people. And I didn't realize that that was marketing. I didn't realize that that was branding. I didn't realize that that was promotions. I was just looking out for my people because that's how I was raised. That's how Brett and I were raised, just to look out for our people. So a lot of the people that we put on was just merely out of love because, you know, we didn't even really, I didn't even really know Muggs. I mean, Be Real and Sinning and Mellow that well at the time. All I knew is that was Muggs people. And, you know, they said, you know, B was rhyming and they were rhyming and we were out here. So, hey, that's what I listened to. And that is something that was unconsciously done, not even really with plan or reason, or rhyme or reason, no pun intended.
Be sure to check out the history of gangster rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Yo MTV back with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.